Hey, Andrew, are you on the call yet?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, awesome. Okay, we can get started then. So, for any of you that are not aware, oh, this is Tracy, by the way, but for any of you that are not aware, Melissa Lohner is no longer with Cambridge. And Andrew Bowers is now going to be conducting these calls for us. He's also coming out to our meeting in October. So this is his first introduction to the group. So you can take it away, Andrew.
Sure, thank you. So I am fairly new to this role and have kind of been thrown into the fire a little bit with Melissa leaving. We will have a new CCO that will be joining as the Chief Compliance Officer for the RIA side of our business. Doug Baxley will be starting here at the beginning of September. So we won't go too long without some compliance leadership in that role. But a lot of our compliance functions and policies overlap between the broker-dealer and the RIA anyway. So we had quite a bit of continuity there to begin with. But I will be filling in some of these roles, and then as Doug transitions to Cambridge, we'll determine what our roles will look like, and he may take over some of these and be visiting with you all as well. I'm pretty familiar with the Premier branch. I did supervise the CAP platform for a number of years. So for those of you that use CAP, I'm familiar with a lot of the advisors. I now supervise the advisory compliance team and financial planning review teams on the compliance side of fiduciary services. So I interact with a lot of advisors there as well. And then I also administer the team directed program, which Premier has some team directed models as well. So I have a few different overlapping interactions with the office there. So hopefully that will help me to be able to answer your questions and be familiar with the way you guys run business. I kind of wanted to give a high level overview. We try to do a good job from a compliance standpoint of providing a lot of communication as we see things changing in the regulatory landscape. A lot of that takes the form of compliance alerts. We release compliance alerts usually every Tuesday. Generally, we have something every week that needs to go out that we feel is important to get to the advisor field. So you watch for those. Sometimes they'll be relevant to you. Sometimes they're just things you need to read through and be familiar with, a refresher of the policy. But those things come out each Tuesday. One of the most recent alerts talked about the annual compliance questionnaire and the firm element requirements. So that's not really anything new, but it is something that we want to make sure that's in front of you once it's made available, so you can complete that and not be rushed as the time frame comes short. Those firm element requirements and the annual compliance questionnaire, those are all due by the end of October. I think this year the close for that is October 30th as the close of that week. And you should be able to access any of that information through CIR2. There's a link out there on the compliance tab for both the annual compliance questionnaire for you to complete that, as well as a link out to the firm element training that outlines all the different training components that will be included there. Talking about some of the firm element training elements, some of that will be, there is an annual compliance meeting. Some of those requirements can be satisfied if you're attending Ignite. Some of the sessions there will satisfy the ACM requirement. And then there's also a firm element requirement this year of a cybersecurity course. And so there is a couple of different sessions at Ignite that will be focused on cybersecurity. We've brought in some industry experts to give an overview there of what they see as far as the trends in the industry and you know, cybersecurity as a whole. There's also an online portion there, so for anyone that's not attending Ignite, there is specific cybersecurity training that you'll go through on the website. I am coming out to Premier's conference, and one of the session that I'll be talking about will satisfy the ACM requirement. So if you're not going to Ignite, but you'll be at that conference, you won't necessarily have to worry about getting the ACM online. We can do it there at the conference in Hershey.
No, she would have said that. Not passing away.
We also issue some of the special reports, and hopefully you see those and take special note of those. Those are generally, I mean, in the last year or so, we started communicating as it related to regulatory changes. The big ones were initially the Department of Labor fiduciary rule, and now with Reg BI coming out, we've circled those regulatory notices and the special reports around those changes. Typically, you know, you guys get the same industry news and articles and releases from the regulators that we do, but we want you guys to be cognizant of decisions that we're making in the home office, changes that we're looking at policy-wise, and what this means for the business going forward. So as we make some of those decisions, those will all be communicated through those special reports.
Yeah.
And one thing that's unique about those special reports, not only do they generally have a specific topic that they revolve around, then they're also followed up by a webinar. So we'll usually have, depending on what the content of that special report is, we'll have webinars that will be hosted by individuals that have an expertise in that area or are involved in the committees and the advisory groups that will be making those decisions. And there's usually a time for a Q&A at the end of those, where you can, you know, get some of your questions answered, or you know, bring things up that you may, you know, think that we haven't thought all the way through. You know, obviously when we're making decisions that affect a whole lot of advisors that all run their businesses slightly differently, you know, we will overlook things, or there may be things that you know, we made a decision on that may affect a different segment of advisors differently. So any of those opportunities that we have to get in front of advisors and get your feedback before we, you know, completely roll out a policy or a procedure change, we want to get that feedback whenever we can. The last thing I had on my list of notes to make sure that I hit on with your group was talking about election season and political contributions. So that's always, again, it's not really a regulatory change, but we always try to get those reminders out there that, you know, if you're making political contributions, you need to have those disclosed and submitted on the Click Blotter. And if you have any questions on the restrictions, you know, how much you can donate in specific instances, we have a team in compliance, the outside activity review team, that can answer those questions, or if questions about how you disclose those, how you use the Click Blotter, things of that nature can be referenced by those teams as well. So I know I rushed through that, you know, pretty quickly. I want to make sure that we have time to address any specific questions. that covered some of the alerts and high-level things. I do have a little bit that I wanted to talk about our share class conversion project and things of that nature, but I wanted to give you guys a chance to kind of chime in with any questions you have over any of that.
I just want to clarify about the meeting in October. Yes, Andrew's going to be offering the ACM credit at the meeting. We also have presentations that are qualified for firm element, one firm element. We were not able to get the cybersecurity portion of that covered at our meeting, but you can do that, like he said, online, or if you're going to the annual conference in Colorado, you can get it there. And then the other thing is, for those of you who are CFPs, CFP Ethics is going to be offered on Friday morning at our conference, and also just a regular CFP credit is going to be offered. So, you know, there's lots of ways to get some credits by coming out to our meeting, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks,
So,
Tracy.
yeah, if any of you have any questions for Andrew about anything, fire away. Okay, Andrew, I have one for you. So the political contributions, is that only if you are contributing to an individual candidate? That has nothing to do with, like, if you're contributing to, like, a PAC or an organization or something like that, or how does that work?
I believe so. You can get some specifics from the outside activity team, but I know that what they released in the compliance alert had more to do with the individual contributions to campaigns, and whether you are eligible to vote for that individual or not. Obviously changes the amount that you can contribute. I'm not as familiar with the rules around donating to a specific party or a PAC. I know that those are slightly different, but they'll have the details on that.
All right.
Hi, this is Tom Walsh. I have another question on elections. I'm just kind of thoroughly disgusted by everything, but my wife might be more inclined to make a contribution. Do I need to log her contributions if she were to make a contribution to an individual as well, or is it just me?
I believe it's just you, but that has come up in the past. I know that there's been discussions about, you know, it can't appear that you're trying to skirt regulation by contributing stuff in someone else's name. So I think a lot of that has to do with whether that contribution is coming out of like a joint bank account or something of that nature. I can get some more details on that for you, Tom, and get that to you. I know the outside activity team has unique situations that come up, and in the past, I believe that's where most of those revolved, is where, you know, it came out of like a joint checking account that was the advisor and his or her wife, and then the explanation was, well, I didn't disclose that because it was my wife making that, but if it comes out of a joint account, you have to disclose that as well.
Okay.
I don't know if it's strictly coming from her. I don't think it does, but I'll check on that for you just to make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's.
Hey, yeah, and Andrew, I would really appreciate if you could, anything you find out about that, if you could also provide to me, and maybe I'll get something together to send out to the whole group.
Okay.
Obviously, it's a hot topic right now.
Sure. I know we've started having the door-to-door here in Southeast Iowa from the different campaigns.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Andrew, are you going to be presenting? This is Jim Heiser, by the way. Sorry.
Hey there.
Are you going to be presenting anything about the SEC regulatory changes when you meet with us in October?
Yep, I'll have a little bit of that, you know, as it pertains to changes to Cambridge's business, and what we see. Not all of those decisions have been, you know, completely fleshed out. We have basically separated Reg BI into, you know, 4 or 5 different subcommittees to look at specific sections of our business that may be affected, and so I'm part of 2 of those 4. So we can, you know, there's a certain committee that's just looking at conflicts and what, you know, what forms of business today may have to be viewed differently under the new reg. So I hopefully I'll have some more of that information by the time that conference rolls around and we get out there. And some of that information, you know, even if it's been discussed internally, a lot of that comes out at Ignite, and I feel like once it's out there at Ignite, I'm free to talk about it anywhere else. But I wait for others to say it first, so keep myself out of trouble. But you know, I will have some of that information.
In a few weeks, some additional information is coming out, right? That's
exactly. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. Thanks.
And that's our aim in a lot of these situations. I mean, obviously that a lot of the regulation as it pertains to Reg BI takes effect in June of 2020. So we have some time to make some decisions there. But a lot of those things, policy or regulatory wise, when we know we have a conference or something coming up where we're going to be in front of a lot of advisors, we want to have answers to a lot of the common questions. So, you know, even though we know we have some time to get this stuff in place, we know that advisors at Ignite and other conferences this fall are going to be asking questions. So we're aiming to have some of those made by the time those things roll around.
Great. Thank you.
And I also would encourage all of you that if you have specific topics that you would like addressed or covered at the meeting, to please let me know. I can't guarantee that Andrew can cover everything because I know he has certain things that he's required to cover for the ACM, but even if he can't cover them, we can certainly try to get some answers for you for the meeting. So please feel free to always share those things with us.
Yeah, definitely. If there's areas that you guys have questions that I may not be the subject matter expert in, but I know about them ahead of time, I can coordinate with individuals here in the home office to get some answers for you, so that I'm, you know, prepared when I'm standing in front of the group. You know, like I said, a lot of our compliance functions are a little bit segregated, but we work pretty cohesively, so I can get some of those answers for you. I know there is some confusion when it comes to, you know, Reg BI and some of the stuff in the news, because there's pieces of that, you know, Reg BI is really geared toward the broker-dealer side of the business and applying, you know, new standards to that side of the business. But around the same time, there's interpretive guidance from the SEC on the standard of care that applies to investment advisors. That's really not any kind of a new regulation, but it's more clarity on existing regulation. And so that's out there for investment advisors. And then Form CRS, the relationship summary, this new summary that's supposed to be a plain English summary of services to help clients understand the differences between, you know, brokers and IARs and that type of thing. That's going to apply to obviously both sides of the business. And so, you know, we'll talk a little bit about that as well as we make some decisions that way.
Sounds good.
I know that Tracy mentioned cybersecurity. That is a pretty big focus by both regulators through the SEC and FINRA in their exam highlights that they both indicated they're going to be looking at cybersecurity and firms' policies and procedures as it relates to that. Obviously, there's all kinds of news stories about data breaches and things like that. So not only will you see that as a regulatory requirement on the firm element, and we'll have sessions on that at Ignite, but then there was also a new compliance release. I think this is in July probably. We negotiated with our E&O carrier to be able to offer a lower deductible for the data privacy portion of the E&O policy that Cambridge offers. It lowered the deductible from, I want to say it was it used to be $100,000 and now it's like $7,500. So it made it much more realistic for advisors to look at that and have that as an option. I know that we did that specifically because cybersecurity has been such a hot topic right now. If you want any more information on that, there's a team, the Dispute Disclosures and Resolutions team in compliance has a lot of the information on E&O coverage and that all the different options there and vendors. So if you have any questions there, you can ask them. But I know that was something that just came out in July. It came out in one of the compliance alerts, but again, sometimes I know you guys get flooded with a lot of information, so it may have kind of flown under the radar. One of the other things that I had as a note to make mention, we are, and this is a lot in reaction to some of the decisions that the SEC has made and recommendations they've made in regards to share class of mutual funds and the scrutiny that's been placed on that. We've come up with the share class of choice for most mutual fund families, and we're going to be doing conversions through the summer. I know there's been consistent communication as different fund families have come up on our radar and have been included in different ways of these conversions. So if you have any questions there's contact information on those releases. But we are looking at unifying the share classes across the different platforms that advisors have available to make that choice a little bit easier. And this is really related towards managed accounts, but so that we have a unified share class, that we've done the due diligence and the back end review on all the different costs and expenses. There are situations where the share class of choice may not be the lowest cost as far as expense ratio goes, and we have a whole analysis that we've done on the back end, and a lot of that has to do with our relationship with the clearing firms and the mutual fund and what expenses they pay to the clearing firms, and whether that would end up being a surcharge if they were using an institutional fund. There's a lot of inner workings for those. But that's been a common question so far is, in a lot of cases, the share class of choice ends up being like an institutional share class that we've got a waiver for the initial purchase minimum. But in some situations, that share class of choice is not the lowest cost. So we have advisors that have showed some concern over that. So in some of those situations, we can talk through the individual funds and provide some explanation on that. But as those conversions happen in managed accounts, you'll be getting notifications, and I think we've got it on a weekly schedule right now where each week you'll get a notification of these are the fund families that will be affected. And so hopefully that's making it a little bit easier, but we know that's a pretty large undertaking from a operational standpoint. So you can be patient with us there, but we'll try to communicate as best we can as we go through that process.
Any other questions this morning for Andrew?
No, thank you.
Well, Andrew, thank you very much for stepping in here, and we have these every quarter, so we'll be hearing a lot from you. And our group knew Melissa pretty well, so I suspect you're going to quickly get to know everybody in the branch, and you're kind of
Sure. She had nothing but good things to say about you guys, and I've worked with Bob and Tracy a lot, and have a lot of respect for the way you guys run the branch as well. So I look forward to meeting some of you in person, both at Ignite and at your guys' conference out there, and working with you guys going forward.
All right. Great. Hey, and thank everybody who participated this morning. And again, if anyone has any specific questions they need me to answer for them now, or they'd like included in our meeting in October, please feel free to send those to me. I'll get something taken care of for that for everybody. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.